Hello. This podcast looks at the Boxheim documents crisis, and I think the word crisis is probably an appropriate word because it certainly did cause Hitler considerable difficulties at the end of 1931, moving into 1932. Okay, so let's just put this into context. We've spoken how in the late summer and early autumn of 1931, and this is approximately a year after the big Nazi breakthrough, difficult times for Hitler and the Nazi Party, apparently getting nowhere, even though they're the second largest party in the Reichstag. Power was still firmly held by Chancellor Brüning working with President Hindenburg. And of course on the 10th of October Hitler had that disastrous meeting with Hindenburg, and it really seems that the Nazis are in a cul-de-sac. Hitler is working as closely as he can with the conservative elites, trying to convince them that his legal path to power he's sticking to it. But in the meantime, the old fighters in the SA are becoming increasingly frustrated. We've already had the Stenner's mutiny, which Hitler struggled to put down, but increasingly there is discontent within the party about whether Hitler's legal method to power, his legal path to power, is actually going to bear fruit, and increasingly the question of should the Nazi resort to its old revolutionary path to power is becoming an open question. Now, in that context, what happened in November 1931 is significant. In the state of Hesse, the police uncovered some very, very compromising Nazi documents from a farmhouse called the Boxheimer Hof, which basically made it very clear what the ultimate goals of the Nazis would be should they actually take power, known as the Boxheim documents. These documents were prepared by a Nazi lawyer called Werner Best, and they gave detailed plans of what the Nazis would do should they be in power in dealing with an anticipated communist coup. Now, the details in these plans hit the local and national newspapers throughout the whole of Germany, and so they were sort of ferociously discussed in the public eye for the best part of 2 or 3 weeks. And what they basically said was the following. They said that all power would be given over to the hands of the SA. Any form of non-compliance with SA orders would be met with a death penalty. Civil servants and public employees who refused to carry out their normal duties would be shot without trial on the spot. Private property would be abolished until further notice, and so on and so forth. Clearly drastic measures, clearly evidence that if Hitler took power, that what would happen would be an extreme right-wing dictatorship. But also within there was that key clause: private property would be abolished until further notice. Now, Hitler, as we've seen, is trying to really quash these sort of like socialist, anti-capitalist comments by the SA, and he thought, having brought Rome back, that he'd succeeded in doing it. But that in itself would have caused considerable embarrassment. It would have caused the conservatives, who Hitler is working hard at cultivating their support, it would have caused them to question Hitler's intentions at this critical juncture. So these Boxheim documents that were made public put Hitler into a very, very difficult situation. He did penalise the Gauleiter of Hesse for the release of these documents. I mean, obviously they had been captured, they had not been deliberately released, and Hitler disavowed all personal knowledge of these documents. I mean, Hitler was furious about the embarrassing public exposure. Hitler could not afford such revelations to be revealed at this critical juncture. He had to maintain this sort of illusion that the Nazi Party were a legal party, and he had to maintain that at all costs. So it was a very, very difficult moment for Hitler, the Boxheim papers. The embarrassment didn't go away either. As we move into 1932, of course, President Hindenburg's 7-year term of office as president expired, and Hitler, of course, stood as a candidate in the presidential elections of March and April 1932. And throughout the election campaigns, the Prussian state police were basically raiding Nazi headquarters. I mean, effectively, because of the Boxheim Papers affair, the word was out that the Nazis were enemies of the state, and should they not be dealt with as effectively a terrorist organisation, in spite of Hitler's profession that they were a legal party. Many people were now seriously doubting that. Now, remember, the state governments controlled policing, and the biggest state government was Prussia. Now, the Prussian state government was controlled by the Social Democratic Party, and the key minister within the state government was the Minister of the Interior, who controlled policing. Now, the Prussian Minister of the Interior, who effectively therefore controlled the police of Prussia, and Prussia, remember, is about 3/5 of Germany, the Prussian Minister of the Interior was a Social Democrat called Severing. And in April 1932, further raids of Nazi headquarters produced further evidence of what the Nazis were planning in the event of Hitler becoming leader of Germany. So all of this mounting evidence, which started with the Boxheim Papers of November 1931 and basically carried on through to the presidential election campaign, when more evidence was unearthed, ultimately landed on the desk of General Groener. Now, General Groener was the Reich Minister of the Interior, so he was the person with ultimate overall responsibility for internal security in Germany. And so a huge amount of pressure was being put on General Groener to actually take action to deal with the Nazi Party, who effectively, all the evidence was suggesting that they were enemies of the state. Now again, Hitler stuck to his guns. He claimed no, that we are basically following a legal path to power. Hitler defended the Boxheim Papers vehemently. He said that those plans that had been drawn up were plans that the Nazis would have instituted if there had been an attempt to take over of power by the communists. So Hitler argued that they were not it was not actually a blueprint of what the Nazis wanted to do. It was simply a plan in response to if there had been an attempt to take over power by the communists. But nevertheless, many people did not believe what Hitler was saying, and so ultimately all of that pressure came to bear on General Groener, who in April 1932, 5 days before the second round of the presidential elections, felt he had no choice but to take action against the Nazis. And what General Groener did was he banned the SA and the SS and the Hitler Youth. Okay, so he actually banned those organisations. Now, That ban by General Groener, of course, completely scuppered General Schleicher's plans, who General Schleicher was conspiring behind the scenes to bring the Nazis into government in one form or another. General Schleicher believed that he could basically turn Hitler into a responsible politician, and General Schleicher believed it was absolutely crucial that the energy that the Nazis had on the political right to be harnessed and be used. And so Schleicher was absolutely furious with General Groener for putting a ban on the SA, and thus the path was now opened for Schleicher to conspire to bring down General Groener and bring in von Papen as the new Chancellor. Okay, so that gives you, I hope, some sort of context about why the Boxheim papers, the Boxheim documents, were such a significant find at this time. Thank you.